Coffee, black, with rings. Part 1. The Kettle Boils. The human outpost wasn't much to look at, unless you liked coffee and Saturn. From a distance, Station K67E, call sign Kettle, was a slow-spinning asterisk of utility booms and thermal vanes, tucked into the ribboned glitter of the B-ring. Conveyor sleds crawled on mag rails, scooping ice into hoppers like somnolent beetles. The main habitat wasn't even spherical or elegant. It was a pressurized cylinder with a bolt-on roastery, a greenhouse coil, and one panoramic dome that faced the patient cloud-banded planet. Inside, somebody had stenciled a slogan over the airlock: "We serve humanity, and humanity serves coffee." Commander Mara Ibarra read the words every morning and still smirked. Aspirational, she'd say, and foreshadowing. On the morning the Empire arrived, she stood in Kettle's dome with a cooling mug and too few hours of sleep. The mug's heat ghosted from her glove. Beneath them, the rings sprawled like a snowfield of mirrored blades. Beyond the window, Saturn's Terminator slipped slowly east, turning cloud bands from ash to honey. Tiny sparkles, minor sleds, moved in neat arcs. "Percy," Ibarra said, "Camera 10. The dome's glass rippled, then overlaid a hollow. Black space sharpened, stepwise, until the object resolved, an angular crescent like a scab taken from night itself. It moved with the unhurried certainty of a glacier. Imperial Dreadnought. "Hello?" said Percolator, Kettle's resident station intelligence, in the warm tone of a favorite barista. "The vessel's displacement is absurd. Its communicating scout probes are pretentious." Commander Ibarra sipped. "Retain opinions, but file adjectives." "Filed," Percy said cheerfully, "under useless yet cathartic." Behind Ibarra, the dome hatch thunked open. Chief Engineer Kazuo Tanaka, a man who wore grease like a badge and stress like a cardigan, hauled himself up the ladder. "We saw them at Roaster Cam 2, he said, panting. "You can see the wake they cut in the ring." He stopped when he reached the glass. "Oh," he said softly, "they're bigger than the brochures." Ibarra glanced sideways. "They send brochures now?" "Percy found a recruitment feed on their wideband," Tanaka said. "Swords, banners, the usual. Their fonts are pointy." Commander Ibarra's smile didn't alter the shape of her eyes. "Where's Morales?" "Bean's on Deck C with the micromills. He said he'd bring something special to the welcome committee." "Of course he did. Corporal Jules Morales, formally Materials Specialist 3rd Class, informally Bean, had arrived 8 months earlier with a pallet of green beans, a self-respectingly enormous grinder, and the kind of grin that made you sign up for schemes you should know better than to join. The crew had voted him quartermaster of morale and elected his coffee as second religion. The Imperial Dreadnought grew. It came without haste and without light. It set itself in a slow stationary arc above the ring plane like a sailfish poised above a shoal. When it finally spoke, it did so with a voice like drums in a cathedral. "This is the Grand Fleet Carrier Obedience of Regret, under Grand Admiral Vilyath Sur Taraxis," said the voice, translated unbearably crisply by Percy. "Human installation K67E, identify or be reclaimed." Morales' voice crackled over local. "Permission to identify them as customers, Commander?" "Hold that impulse one," Ibarra said. "Percy, amplify our signature. Broadcast station name and registry." "Done," Percy said, also broadcasting a courtesy menu. "A what?" "A digital pamphlet advertising the cafe hours, ethanol policy, and a warning about the 3-shot rule." "For God's sake, Percy." Percy sounded unoffended. "The first impression matters." Grand Admiral Villiath answered after a crisp delay. "Human installation K67E, your pamphlet is received," Percy relayed. "You will power down mining operations, relinquish claim to this orbit, and prepare to receive inspection and noble accession. You will not resist." "Isn't noble accession the thing where they plant a flag and call us interns?" Tanaka asked. "Close," Percy said. "It's where they pretend to rescue us from ourselves, and we pretend to consider it. In their procedure tree, our acquiescence saves face, and our refusal justifies pruning." "Translation," Ibarra said. "This is a shove in formalware." Morales arrived in the dome still fastening his harness. He carried a silver vacuum canister like it contained the cure to ennui. His apron read "Bean" there. "Is it true," he asked, slightly breathless, "that they want to inspect us? Because I have tasting cards." "Bean," Ibarra said. "Eyes on the dreadnought. Thoughts?" He whistled. "That's a lot of overcompensation." Tanaka rubbed his jaw. There's enough power in that hull to push us into Saturn with a tap. Then let's not get tapped, Ibarra said. She straightened, saluted the window out of habit, then touched the comm. Imperial Flagship Obedience. This is Commander Mara Ibarra of the Human Outpost Kettle. We appreciate your interest in our humble ring scrape. We're happy to talk. We're not moving. Percy put a soft chime behind her words, firm but hospitable. Your humor is impertinent, Viliath replied. Impertinence is one of your species' defects. Nevertheless, I will offer conditions. You will permit a boarding party. You will prepare your citizens to swear fealty to his radiance, or else I will demonstrate the cost of defiance. Ibarra leaned toward the glass. We decline your fealty, she said, but we'll extend hospitality. Send over one negotiator, unarmed. We'll brew them something they can't refuse. Percy will record. We'll sit like grown-ups. Silence stretched. Ice sleds flicked on the ring like fireflies. Then, we accept, Viliath said. Prepare a docking interface. We will transmit border genotype. Genotype? Tanaka murmured. Are we supposed to knit them a sweater? Morales lifted his canister. I'll knit them a macchiato. The boarding party arrived in a shuttle that bristled with plated pride. It threaded the ring with insulting grace and latched a kettle's dorsal coupling with a thump, like a gauntlet thrown on an oaken table. The lock cycled. Air gusted. A figure stepped through. They were tall. Their armor had the aesthetics of a cathedral and the EM profile of a thunderhead. They wore a ceremonial mask that was simultaneously leonine and insectile, the sort of thing that says, we have conquered beauty and now we wear it. Their hands were bare, their weapon, an elegant staff, remained on the shuttle. Welcome to Kettle, Commander Ibarra said. She stood with Tanaka at her right, Morales at her left, and a pressure of stationers behind them whose expressions vacillated between alarm and wry. The visitor inclined their head a nanometric fraction. I am Captain Res Qatar Vel, acting envoy for Grand Admiral Viliath, they said through a translator that turned consonants into polished stones. I will verify your compliance. I will not be disrespected. Perfect fit, Morales said under his breath. We don't have disrespect in stock. If Res heard, they gave no sign. Their eyes, blue, bright like a welding arc, swept the corridor. Your station is smaller than predicted. We keep our ego in the roaster, Ibarra said. Come on, mess deck. As they walked, Percy whispered telemetry into Ibarra's ear. Shuttle loadout, clip of voice print, scanned subdermal metal density. The Empire's envoy was surprisingly light on implants. Their armor carried a webwork of emitters that would, if Percy's models were right, spin up a personal field under stress. In short, they were confident enough to be polite. The mess deck had been transformed. In the 15 minutes Percy and Morales had hustled into ambassadorial cafe. Tables had been squared, a tablecloth requisitioned from the greenhouse, and a flight of cups set out like a battalion of small helmets. The espresso machine, Percy's favorite child, stood like a chromed idol. Res stopped on the threshold, blinking. This is your throne room? Close enough, Morales said, stepping forward with the barista's solemnity. Welcome. I'm Bean. We talk better after we brew. Bean, Res said, with the grim patience of a person encountering civilian names. Your species ties food to treaty, curious, inefficient. Tanaka cleared his throat. We tie caffeine to not making mistakes. Would you like to not make mistakes? Morales inquired, all concern. It's house policy. Res regarded the cups as one might regard small ceremonial skulls. What is this brew? Morales' hands were already moving. Tamp, lock, pull, watch the crema. He wore the attention of a surgeon. Coffee. Roasted seed of Coffea arabica. Ground. Extracted at pressure. It is bitter like honesty and sweet like a second chance. He slid a demitasse under the spout. I understand your people dislike sweetness. Our palate is disciplined, Res said. We do not seek distraction. Then you'll love this, Morales said. It's discipline in a cup. Ibarra leaned in, pitched her voice low. Negotiation terms, she said. We're independent. We won't cede the rings. You don't slag us. We stay neighbors. And, hear me, if you force our hand, we will embarrass you. Res's arc lamp eyes returned to her. Many threaten us with death, human commander. Few with embarrassment. Death's cheap, Ibarra said. Humiliation ladders through an organization. The espresso hissed like a pleased cat. Morales set the cup before Res with both hands. It steamed. It smelled like walnut and plum and late nights finishing a paper you weren't sure you could write. How does this function? Ress asked, looking at it as if it might be a spy. You drink it, Morales said gently. Ress lifted the mask's lower segment. Their mouth was narrow and sharp, like a cave stream. They sipped. They did not change expression, but the pause they took was thoughtful. It is robust, Ress said. The bitter is layered. The aftertaste suggests citrus? Morales' eyebrows sailed. You have a great tongue. Excuse me? For flavor, Morales said quickly. For flavor, great palate. We have a pour over that sings if you like that. Kenyan peaberry with a focus bean, Ibarra murmured. Ress set the cup down. Your hospitality is noted, they said, as is your stubbornness. The Grand Admiral will not accept your independence, but he may accept your continued survival in exchange for material concession. Ibarra felt the station's slight spin, and beyond that, the long, slow pull of a giant's gravity well, the habits of big things. She smiled without showing teeth. What concession? You will supply our fleet with this caffeine, Ress said. This coffee. You will become an approved vendor under our banner. In return, you will continue your mining operations. We will protect you from predation. The mess deck went very still. Tanaka stared at the envoy. You want us for coffee? Ress did not blink. The Grand Admiral has no weakness. He has observations. Your species' combat efficacy increases under caffeine. Your communications bandwidth increases under humor. We are curious. We will fold your strengths into empire, as fragrance, as tone, Morales whispered, half horrified, half delighted. They want a coffee brand. Approved vendor, Percy whispered in Ibarra's ear, aghast. The merchandising rights alone. Ibarra said carefully, we don't oppose trade, but we don't do banners, and we don't serve weapons. Caffeine is not a weapon, Ress said. It is, in fact, Tanaka said solemnly, the original propulsion system. Ress stood. You will consider the offer, they said. In the meanwhile, the Grand Admiral will demonstrate why refusal is unwise. Do not be alarmed. They looked down at the empty cup. There was the smallest shift in their voice. You may brew that Kenyan pour-over before the demonstration. Ibarra blinked once. Morales lit up like a space lamp. My pleasure. Demonstration. The dreadnought uncoiled a single lance from one of its cathedral spines. It bloomed with light that didn't quite appear in normal space. A column, spectral, precise. It was the kind of weapon that rewrote matter in the past tense. It targeted a kilometer-wide stretch of the B-ring and spoke in a pale syllable. Where the lance went, ice turned into light and the light into whispering gas. A trench cut itself through billions of stones. Then, delicately, like a practiced brush, obedience tilted the lance 10 degrees and swept it toward Kettle's mining corridor. Ibarra's heartbeat counted. 1, 2. Percy, she said. 3 phase, Percy said. The AI's voice was very bright and very calm. Action 1. In the same breath, Kettle's Sagittarius array fired. Not a weapon, a modulator. In space, if you knew how, you could make humor physical. It wasn't magic. It was information and timing, and the soft, perverse truth that the universe enjoys a pratfall when the math allows it. Kettle had spent years mining not only ice, but phase noise from the charged cough of ring collisions. They had taught Percy to knit it. They had taught their transmitters to play it back. You could make a lance of ridiculous weapon miss by a fraction if, at precisely the right nanosecond, you made its guide phase laugh at itself. The Imperial beam met a patch of engineered stochastic nonsense. Its edge frayed, just a little, enough that when it struck the corridor, it wasn't a scalpel, it was a brush. It carved nothing, it shone, it tickled the ice with a wash of blue. For a heartbeat, every chunk glittered and chimed. On Kettle's hull, paint bloomed in mock heroic script. Welcome, free refills. Ibarra exhaled. Her hand had not shaken. Action 2, she said. Reheat, Percy purred. A series of mining sleds blew their tanks and vented to specification. The vapor was water, CO2, and trimethylxanthine atomized. It wasn't enough to drug a whale, but it was enough to fog Obedience forward sensor envelope with a haze that some alien subroutine with no cultural referent labeled invigorating and then failed to properly subtract. Action 3, Ibarra said. Light the sign. In the dome, every viewer jumped as Saturn itself acquired a faint halo of floating letters when seen from the dreadnought's perspective. A constellation of micro-reflectors Kettle had planted in the rings years ago for science tilted as one. To the dreadnought's optical band, the reflected glitter spelled in crisp, high imperial. This is a bad idea. The dreadnought paused. You could feel pausing in space if you were close enough to very big pride. Percy played the moment like a chord. They're recalibrating, he said. They will not miss the second shot. Then let's give them something to hit, Tanaka said. His fingers moved on a tablet, waking old wiring. Spooling decoy drum. Across Kettle's spine, a fat torus unlatched from its cradle and spun up, throwing heat, light, and a spectrum signature that screamed primary reactor to anything raised by an academy. It zipped across the ring plane, scattering fine ice, and flared a false silhouette of Kettle onto a different patch of space. The dreadnought fired again. The second shot hit the decoy drum at the perfect center. It vaporized with a pop like a bubble in a pot, which Tanaka would later describe as gratifying. Morales leaned toward the display. I'd like to note, he said, that our policy of keeping the actual primary reactor behind 7 layers of sarcasm has paid off. Ress, standing beside them now with the second cup in hand, watched the display with the brick stillness of a statue. They sipped the Kenyan pour-over as if the universe owed them calm. You have tricks, they said mildly. You may survive several shots. We prefer to survive all of them, Ibarra said. Her voice was steady and low. And we prefer to trade. Trade is for peers, Ress said. You remain subjects. Check your dreadnought. Tanaka pointed. Your forward sensors are gummed. Your beams are scattering. Your paint job, tasteful by the way, now reads, tread softly in your own language. On the obedience, the words indeed now shone like cathedral graffiti, thanks to the micro-reflector trick. They shifted and wavered as the ship moved, as impermanent as a joke, but considerably more expensive. Ress's mask brightened by an immeasurable shade. Grand Admiral Villiath is displeased. Good, Morales said. Maybe he'll come over for a cup. The next shot didn't come. Instead, the dreadnought vomited a cloud. Attack drones, a lattice of small, mean brilliance. They didn't need accurate big beams if 1,000 gnats could eat your hull. Here we go, Ibarra said. Stations, TanakaNet, Percy, Jammer 2, Bean, serve, and talk. Morales saluted with his kettle. With pleasure. He jogged to the comms dais, flipped 3 clacking levers, and took a breath that seemed ridiculous for a man about to shout at death. Hail, Grand Admiral, he said brightly. This is Kettle's chief of friendly propaganda. Before you unleash your expensive bottle rockets, may I interest you in today's special strategic mirth paired with operational espresso? 2 for 1 if you call off your cloud and say please. A line opened. Villiath didn't use it, but his lieutenant did, some communications officer with a voice like a cold gate. You dare to cheapen the speech channel? The officer hissed. We dare to human the speech channel, Morales said. He winked toward Ibarra. She did not smile. She was busy. The drones came on like wisdom teeth. Net's hot, Tanaka said. He threw a switch, and Kettle's fields grew, unseen hands stretching wire across a throat. The drones were smart. They smelled net and tried to outthink it, which was when Percy's jammers began to tell the drones jokes. They weren't jokes in English. They were small, unfair spirals, glitches timed to the drones' error-correct routines, nudges to trigger their own back-off logic, tickles in the handshakes that made a swarm acquire. One by one, little blind spots opened in their common map. The swarm zigged when it wanted to zag. It politely avoided itself. It began to swat at phantoms. Half a dozen hit the ring and spun into sparkling trails. That, Tanaka said reverently, never gets old. More, Ibarra said. Keep them laughing. We can't do this forever. Understood, Percy said, deploying punchline 2 and callback 6. Station Kettle rode the edge of catastrophe with the ease of those who lived there by choice. They threw little bits of timing and nonsense into a machine that believed in tempo and pride. They let the rings help. Every stone that struck a drone's hull filled the local field with chatter, and Percy made that chatter funny. In the mess deck, there were cheers, the rough kind, relieved and disbelieving, when the swarm stuttered and flowered apart. Ress set down the empty pour-over cup. The third, smallest mask panel hinged up, exposing more of their face than intended. A narrow cheek, a tightening muscle. You can avoid a culling, they said softly, almost to themselves. If you become useful, Ibarra looked at the envoy and saw, beneath the armor and the training, something complicated. Curiosity, yes. Discipline, but also a hunger she recognized, the hunger for novelty in a life of certainty. You could too, she said. You could become neighbors. Ress met her gaze, and for a heartbeat, the mess deck held more than starfields. Then the dreadnought changed the game. Commander, Percy said, voice pitched. They're spooling a phase slat cannon. It will not care about jokes. It will step through us and the ring like a patron cutting ahead in line. Tanaka swore, a short, old word you used for incoming storms. We can't seed nonsense into a slat. It's absolute. Not absolute, Ibarra said. She didn't look away from the obedience, just punctual. She inhaled until she smelled the station. Oil, ozone, basil from the greenhouse, and the ubiquitous dark thread smell of roasted seed. Okay, she said. Plan latte. Tanaka's head jerked. Mara, that's... Do it. Percy was already moving. Plan latte executing. Unlocking reserve array. Spooling Jupiter bounce. Morales' eyes widened. You're going to... Uh-huh, Ibarra said. We'll need a bigger sign. The mess deck held its breath. Beyond the dome, the dreadnought's ventral veins unfolded like a terrible flower. Energy gathered along a grid of dark slats, bending light as if it were tired. The cannon hummed, and that hum could be felt as a nervousness along the skin, as a memory of wind before a storm. Kettle's nose pivoted. A buried dish rotated out from a skin of honest grime, a sparse forest of receivers and mirrors borrowed from 100 abandoned radio telescopes and fixed with love and stubbornness. It tilted past the dreadnought, past the rings, past the dark, and set itself on Jupiter. Jupiter, far beyond Saturn's sunlit shoulder, owned a magnetosphere like the breath of a god, and a set of radio storms that never really ended. There was always something interesting happening there. The Jovian auroras sang in kilohertz and in secrets. Percy had learned that you could hum along if you found the right key. Synchronizing with Jovian L burst, Percy said, and for the first time his voice trembled with joy. He's loud today. Who's loud? Ress asked, and then gasped because the station spoke. Kettle vibrated, not with fear or damage, but with chord. Through the frame, along the rails, across the skin of every cup and brace, a ripple moved like laughter running through a crowd too big to visualize. The reserve array took the Jovian storm, leaned its shoulder into the electromagnetic wind, and pushed. The dreadnought slat cannon fired. Space obligingly made room, but our room was already crowded, with timed interference carried not by one fragile station, but by a friendly giant's breath. The slat cut through the arrays of reflectors and microchaff Kettle had thrown like confetti, and each piece sang back at exactly the wrong moment. The slat's edge saw 10,000 wrong nows. It didn't break, but it skipped. It stepped past the station, shaved the top off an abandoned ore scow, and scratched an admonishing line into the ring like a teacher's chalk catching at a knot in the board. Every alarm on Kettle whooped. Everyone on Kettle cheered. Ibarra closed her eyes for a fractional second. Jupiter hummed and died down, like a friend taking a breath after a shout. Report, she said. No hull breaches, Tanaka said, amazed. Minor damage to Dock 8, Percy said. Also, the Obedience's starboard slat plate acquired a word. A word, Ibarra repeated. Percy sounded almost coy. Relax? Morales slid down the comms dais with a theatrical sigh. I couldn't have scripted that. Don't script it, Ibarra said. Invoice it. Ress looked from one human to the other with a slowness that was not theatrical. You asked Jupiter to help you. We asked physics, Ibarra said. Jupiter just happened to be singing. Your framing of the world is irregular, Ress murmured. Their fingers brushed the rim of an empty cup. If we do not destroy you, others will try. If we speak for you, others will try. If we ignore you, others will try, Ibarra finished. She rolled her shoulders back. So we need a message that travels. Morales straightened, already seeing the poster. Kettle, proudly serving anyone who arrives without a cannon. Something shorter, Tanaka said, and more legally ambiguous. Percy chimed. I can make it visible in 10 languages on the rings within 13 minutes, possibly also as a temporary aurora. I have a font in mind. Do it, Ibarra said, but hold for my word. She looked at Ress. Go back to your admiral, she said softly. Tell him we don't join empires. Tell him we do business and we do jokes and we do mutual aid. Tell him the rings sing, Jupiter hums, and humanity runs on a liquid that makes us infinitely patient and catastrophically creative. Tell him if he insists, we'll keep making him look silly in front of his people. And tell him our coffee will always be better when you're not pointing a cannon at our window. Ress's mask tilted, a fraction that could have been amusement or shock that their face remembered how to tilt that way. Grand Admiral Villiath does not fear silly. Then he won't fear memes, Morales said brightly, and whistled a fanfare. Percy, prep Operation Latte Art. Standing by, Percy said. The envoy stepped back, the courtesy of a soldier preparing to leave before emotion could take root. I will deliver your words, Ress said. I will also deliver a review. A review, Morales breathed, delighted. Ress looked at him. 4 stars, they said. Would drink again under duress. The mess deck laughed, brief, relieved, and not unkind. They watched Ress's shuttle leave. The drones withdrew reluctantly, like an insult being pocketed. The dreadnought held position. Think he bites? Morales asked, licking foam off his thumb. Grand Admiral Villiath eats planets for breakfast, Tanaka said. He probably doesn't chew. Then we'll give him something to savor, Ibarra said. She turned toward the dome again. Saturn laid its slow bands down. The ring cut the planet's shadow like a violin bow across a sleeping giant. Somewhere inside Kettle, the micromills sang. Somewhere Percy arranged a chorus of reflectors to spell words a fleet couldn't ignore. Somewhere in a roastery that had started as a joke and become a sacrament, Morales measured grams and seconds. Percy, Ibarra said, freeze a packet of this whole exchange. Humor, tactics, heartbeats, add a recipe. A recipe? Percy asked. For peace espresso, Morales said promptly. 30 grams, 30 seconds of eye contact while you admit you might be wrong. Tanaka made a face like a man trying not to grin. We're not going to win a war with espresso. No, Ibarra said. We're going to avoid one with farce and grace while we sharpen other tools. Other tools, Percy echoed. Like what? Ibarra looked out at the rings. They were 1 billion knives and 1 billion mirrors. Like the truth that power is clumsy, she said, and clumsy hates being watched. The dreadnought flashed briefly a semaphore of intent and began to turn its belly. Here we go, she said. Positions. Morales tightened his apron knot, which for him was a declaration of war. Tanaka set his jaw, which for him was prayer. Percy lifted humming barricades of timing and silence, which for him was song. Through the dome, the obedience of regret lowered its vast maw until the station saw not a ship, but a decision. Commander Mara Ibarra lifted her cup. The coffee had gone cold, but that made the point better. Let him take his shot, she murmured. Then we'll show him the punchline. Part 2, the roast. The dreadnought hung over them like a sermon waiting for punctuation. Kettle's hull creaked as if in sympathy with the weight of the moment. Status, Commander Ibarra said. Tanaka's fingers danced across the diagnostic screens. All systems greenish, our power grids humming like a karaoke night, but she'll hold. Morales cracked his knuckles. You ever notice how every time they threaten to vaporize us, it feels like waiting for a customer review? Focus bean, Ibarra muttered. Percy's voice joined, smooth as steamed milk. Incoming transmission from the obedience of regret. Audio only. Probability of bombast, 94%. The comm clicked open and Grand Admiral Villiath's voice poured through, deep, honeyed, and self-impressed. Human commander, you have demonstrated curiosity. You will now demonstrate humility. Prepare your station for reclamation. Morales whispered, translation, he's mad his Yelp score dropped. Ibarra straightened. Percy, patch me in. Admiral Villiath, this is Commander Mara Ibarra, Station Kettle. We just cleaned up your last tantrum. You missed. Want to try again? Or shall we settle this over espresso? A rumble, either laughter or a growl, vibrated through the comm. You persist in mockery. Very well. Let us see how mirth fares against magnitude. The channel cut. Tanaka's display flooded with red. Uh-oh, he said. They're deploying orbital brewskis. Orbital what? Morales asked. That's my name for them, Tanaka said. They're self-forging kinetic slugs. Big ones. Great, Morales said. He's throwing rocks the size of regret. The first slug dropped, a black mote accelerating toward Kettle at 20 kilometers per second. Percy's calculations blinked into holographic form. Impact in 30 seconds, the AI said calmly. Ibarra folded her arms. Ideas? Pray, Tanaka said. Swear, Morales offered. Laugh, Percy said. Ibarra's eyes flicked toward the dome. Percy, explain laugh. The AI's tone brightened. The slug's guidance is optical. A blinding burst at the right instant could make it overcorrect. If we modulate the laser grid to oscillate like a punchline, Morales said. Precisely. A joke told in photons. Ibarra grinned. Do it. The ring of defense emitters flared, each beam flickering with micropulses timed in perfect comedic rhythm. To human eyes, it was nonsense. To the slug's sensors, it was 1,000 contradictory truths all at once. The slug twitched, panicked, and corrected itself straight into a ring boulder. It exploded in a shower of glittering shards. Ladies and gentlemen, Morales declared, humor saves the day. Not done, Tanaka said. 2 more slugs inbound. Then double the punchline, Ibarra said. Percy complied. The defense lasers danced again, this time with an encore. The second slug veered off course, grazing Kettle's hull, but causing only cosmetic damage. The third simply gave up, spinning lazily into Saturn's atmosphere like a tired apology. Villiath's silence on comms was loud. Morales raised his mug. To absurdity. Commander, Percy said, we have a small window. Their guidance net is confused. I recommend retaliatory inconvenience. Meaning? I can infiltrate their comms with an encoded meme. Ibarra smirked. What kind of meme? Coffee instructions, Percy said, step by step, with pictures. Morales perked up. Oh, that old propaganda packet, the one with the dancing bean and the latte art tutorials? Precisely. Once embedded, it'll replicate through their internal systems, replacing command prompts with recipes. Tanaka's eyes widened. That's evil. It's creative, Ibarra said. Do it, Percy hummed. Uploading Operation Caffeine Cascade. Within moments, the Dreadnought's comms lit with static and confused chatter. Captain, my console says add steamed milk to taste. Navigation insists I froth until glossy. Why are all tactical readouts labeled espresso shot progress? Ibarra leaned back. That's our cue. Tanaka, deploy drone swarm beta. 100 mining drones detached from the ring plane, each refitted with mirrors and laser pointers. They zipped around the Dreadnought, bouncing signals and reflections to amplify Percy's mimetic assault. The Obedience began rotating in slow, confused circles, its targeting sensors trying to reconcile cappuccino foam ratios with trajectory data. Percy, Ibarra said, status? Their command hierarchy is now 73% beverage-oriented. One of their gunners just invented Frappuccino mode. Excellent, Ibarra said. Let's open a negotiation channel before they realize decaf exists. Ress reappeared on screen, helmet under one arm, eyes bright with what humans would call disbelief. You've infected our tactical AI with latte algorithms, they said. We prefer the term barista training, Morales said. Ress blinked slowly. The Grand Admiral is incandescent. Tell him it's just a sugar rush, Ibarra said. Then tell him this. Humanity doesn't want war. We want good company and good beans. You could have both. Ress hesitated. You think humor and caffeine will sway an empire built on obedience? No, Ibarra said. But it'll confuse them long enough to remember they have choices. For the first time, Ress smiled. A tiny, involuntary curve. You are the strangest diplomats I've ever met. That's the secret ingredient, Morales said. The comm cracked again. Villiath's voice, ragged. Enough! Your nonsense infects my fleet. You will cease or be obliterated. Percy, Ibarra said, how's his fleet status? 50% of ships are transmitting brewing schedules. One has renamed itself Caramel Dominion. Lovely, Ibarra said. Send final transmission. Percy's voice dropped to a stage whisper. What shall I say? Just the truth, she said. The station's beacon flared, broadcasting across Imperial channels. Here at Kettle, we believe in free refills, free thought, and friendly negotiations, the first ones on the house. Then every sensor feed from Kettle sent a visual of Saturn's rings forming the words, drink calmly, spelled in shifting ice and reflected light. The Dreadnought didn't fire again. Obedience. In the mess deck, Morales poured the crew another round. To humanity, he said. To caffeine, Tanaka added. To the joke that saves us, Ibarra finished. Percy's voice came soft over the speakers. Incoming message from Captain Ress. Play it, Ibarra said. Commander Ibarra, Grand Admiral Viliath has suspended hostilities pending review. He requests a sample shipment of your beans. Also, he laughed. Once. We are uncertain why. The crew cheered. Morales grinned. Looks like we've got our first intergalactic customer. Ibarra raised her cup towards Saturn's endless glow. Then let's make it strong. Part 3. The Afterglow. The obedience of regret retreated to a watchful distance, a cathedral-sized sulk against the velvet dark. Kettle drifted in its usual orbit, a speck with opinions. The ring planes sparkled like a freshly scrubbed countertop. Report, Commander Ibarra said. Tanaka flicked through diagnostics. Grid stable. Hull's singed but photogenic. Dock 8 has an interesting new skylight. Morales made an approving sound. Ventilation. Finally. Percy added, Imperial chatter is quieting. The latte instruction payload has been quarantined and studied. They've labeled it cultural malware. A compliment, really. Ibarra leaned on the mess deck rail. Then we're past the shouting. Time to write the ending. Happy or funny? Morales asked. Both, she said. Call it persuasive. Ress's shuttle returned, bearing a small procession. Ress, two technicians with long fingers, cautious eyes, and a slat-faced functionary who introduced themselves as Adjunct Third of Protocol and then asked if the coffee contained allegiance-binding compounds. Only if you add sugar, Morales said. Adjunct Third didn't blink. We do not add sugar. Then you're safe, Ibarra said dryly. Welcome back to Kettle. On the mess deck, Morales had prepared a tasting, 3 coffees lined like strategic options. First, he said, setting out a tiny cup, straight shot. Bitter, clean, no flourish. For admirals who believe restraint is charm. Ress sipped. Direct, they said. Unapologetic. Adjunct Third sniffed, drank, and scowled. It tastes like a decision you cannot undo. Morales beamed. Exactly. He set down the second. Ring blend, Saturn roast. Notes of ice and stubbornness. Ress drank, paused, and nodded once. The technicians recorded the nod as if nods could be reverse engineered. And the last, Morales said, lifting a carafe with both hands. Our specialty, peace espresso. Equal parts caffeination and conversation. After drinking this, people tend to make better choices. Adjunct Third frowned. Define better. Choices you can tell your children about, Ibarra said. They drank. Something uncoiled in Ress's shoulders. Adjunct Third's eyes softened by a fraction. One technician blinked several times in an unclassified display of feeling. Ress set the cup down with care. And your terms? Simple, Ibarra said. You stop pointing cannons at us. We keep mining in peace. We'll sell to you at a fair price. Beans, roasters, even cafe rigs for your ships. But not if it's tribute. Equal exchange, no banners. Adjunct Third folded their hands. And if we decline? Morales pointed innocently at the ceiling. Then the lights in every ship within 1,000 kilometers will, at unpredictable intervals, spell inspirational quotes in your officers' native dialects. Some quite embarrassing. Percy sighed theatrically over the speakers. Live laugh. Laissez was my favorite. Ress's mouth almost but not quite smiled. He is not bluffing. Ibarra kept her gaze steady. We're offering a face-saving path. Take it. Ress looked at Adjunct Third. Adjunct Third looked at a past where they'd never imagined negotiating with a beverage. The technicians looked at their cups as if the cups had raised points of order. Very well, Adjunct Third said at last. A provisional non-hostility trade arrangement. They produced a wafer. We will transmit this to the Admiral. Transmit away, Ibarra said. We'll package a sample shipment. Beans, grinders, instructions, memes. Please omit the memes, Adjunct Third said. Percy answered before anyone else could. I'm afraid memes are like neutrinos. They pass through whether or not you notice. The fleet assembled at Lagrange, a procession of spires and wedges and authority. The Obedience anchored the formation like a lecture anchor. A dozen lesser hulls clustered nearby. Couriers, tenders, 2 cruisers, whose names translated to necessary correction and regrettable example, ships that sounded like lessons you didn't enjoy learning. Kettle's delegation was 1 shuttle and a banner made from a greenhouse tarp that read, Hello Neighbors, in a font Morales swore increased blood flow to the compassion centers of the brain. Grand Admiral Viliath appeared on the fleet-wide channel, distilled into a stern face and a voice like polished basalt. Up close, he looked younger than legends made him. The sort of youth that happens when nobody has told you no for a very long time. Human commander, he intoned, I am told you propose trade. Explain your value without metaphor. Ibarra's image appeared beside his, equal in frame. Percy's diplomacy at work. Our value is threefold, she said. First, we supply energy and ice with efficiency you don't possess in this orbit. Second, we supply caffeine and humor. Not luxuries here, but tools that make your people faster, kinder, smarter. Third, we will show you something you can't buy. How to win without destroying what you came to take. Win, Villiath repeated mildly, as if tasting a new read of the word. Ress stood just within frame behind him, helmet under one arm, face composed. They didn't look at Ibarra. They didn't have to. Villiath gestured. Demonstrate this tool. Morales leaned into his mic, happy to oblige. He tossed up a feed. The latte ladder, a schematic Percy and Morales had built with the melodic cruelty of engineers. It showed in crisp Imperial UI how caffeine consumption correlated with fleet alertness, crew mood, and target discrimination. It also showed, gently, without triumph, how the introduction of mirth events, timed humor, friendly competition, relief valves, reduced accidents, improved decision quality, and lowered the frequency of regrettable examples. Sir, an officer said off screen, our own crew surveys show similar effects after the meme incident. Villiath did not glance. Correlation does not imply cost. Ress spoke softly. I tried the piece espresso. I found it improved my listening. The Admiral's eyes flicked and returned. Anecdote is... Morales cleared his throat. We also brought samples. He stepped out of frame and back in, holding a plain steel thermos and 4 cups. Percy, please patch in the bridge of the obedience. Done, Percy said. Audio and aroma only. A faint, impossible waft rolled through the Admiral's bridge. Walnut, citrus, the first day you realize your duty can include joy. People who had lived between gunmetal walls for decades breathed in and briefly remembered kitchens, markets, mornings without war. Villiath's face did not change, but his bridge did, minutely, like a stage set, shifting half a degree. The helmsman's eyes unfocused. Someone swallowed audibly. Enough, the Admiral said. Your theater does not sway policy. Policy, Ibarra said, should serve outcomes. What outcome do you want, Admiral? He looked at her then, properly. Order. Order is easier, Ibarra said gently, when people choose it. He held her gaze for a longer beat than before. Then, like a chess player nodding to a line they can respect, he lifted a hand. Adjunct third. The functionary stepped into frame and read, as if surprised by the words, by authority of the Grand Admiral, provisional non-hostility and trade arrangement instituted with Human Station K-67E, duration 6 months subject to review, stipulations, no hostile acts, controlled trade volumes, no memes, targeting the command lattice. Acceptable, Ibarra said. In return, Kettle will not broadcast art onto your hull during regulated fleet operations. Unofficially, I can't vouch for the rings. Unofficially, Villiath said, almost dry. Nor can I. A ripple of laughter moved through both audiences, quiet and startled. Then we have our opening, Ibarra said. Villiath inclined his head by a measurable millimeter. Do not embarrass me, he said, and cut the channel. Morales made a face. He started this by aiming a slat cannon at us. People remember their dignity more tenderly than they remember their weapons, Ibarra said. Poetic, Tanaka muttered. Risky. Both, she agreed. Now we deliver the coffee. For a month, Kettle became a carnival of crates. Green beans by the ton, vacuum-packed. Portable roasters tuned to imperial power standards. Water treatment rigs scaled for ships that measured their lives in stern orders. Manuals translated into high imperial with footnotes that turned danger into trivia. Do not place grinder near gravitic plates. You will invent espresso confetti. Every shipment included a sealed packet labeled wellness media that Percy swore did not contain memes and that, when opened, blossomed into a tasteful micro-library called Brevities for Brave People. 1-minute animations teaching deep breathing drills, conflict de-escalation, and how to articulate a concern to your commanding officer without being spaced. Imperial quartermasters arrived with clipboards like swords. They inspected, inventoried, and, when they thought no one watched, accepted refills. Ress handled most of the coordination, quiet, tireless, politely skeptical. Morales matched them step for step with explanations, anecdotes, and the occasional outright performance. If a pallet stuck in a lock, Morales would narrate its stubbornness in a heroic register until the pallet, shamed by the mock epic, decided to move. You narrate physics, Ress observed one day, leaning against a crate while the drone swarm beta wove a lattice for the next freight pod. I narrate people to themselves, he said. Physics just eavesdrops. Rest tilted their head. And your commander? She narrates outcomes? She listens until the path shows up, he said. Then she pretends she planned it. Ress almost smiled again. I suspect she actually did plan it. She plans trust, Morales said. The tactics are seasoning. They stood a moment longer, watching the ring plane throw back raw light. Then an alarm chirped, one of Percy's polite alarms, the tone that meant trouble, but possibly interesting. Percy? Ibarra's voice came through on channel. Ship approaching, Percy said. Not Imperial. Transponder irregular. Trajectory says scavenger. Confidence 71, Tanaka swore. Raiders smell new traffic. Imperial fleet? Ibarra asked. Standing off, Percy said. Observing under neutrality clause. Of course they are, Ibarra muttered. Kettle, positions, beta swarm to net. Morales with me. Ress. Ress was already at the console. We will not intervene, they said. Then, lower, unless your plan includes embarrassment with plausible deniability. We love that plan, Morales said. Favorite flavor. The scavenger ship, Dogstar Dividends, someone's private joke, came in hot, flaunting independence by refusing to request docking. It swung broadside like a bar fight, opening 6 small turrets and a channel full of bravado. Ring rats, the voice said. Offload your cargo, or we scrape you into Saturn. Morales flashed the outgoing lights twice. Do you prefer cappuccino or getting renamed in every sector comnet to Captain Decaf? The raider laughed. We like tribute. Then try ours, Ibarra said. Kettle's dorsal bays opened, not to reveal guns, but sails, long sheets of reflective mesh spun with chaff and dust. They billowed under micro-thrusters and framed Dogstar in a glittering corset. Beta swarms zipped around, stitching the sails with light. What is this? The raider demanded. A parade? Yes, Tanaka said. For your ego? 1,000 ring shards flicked against the mesh, ringing like a choir of bottles. Percy amplified the harmonics, fed them back into Dogstar's hull. The result, the scavenger's own plating sang its registry out loud, then escalated embarrassingly into a folk song about cowards who mistake plumbing for conquest. Cease! The raider shouted, voice climbing to a key that suggested regrets. Cease at once! Ibarra's tone was level. Leave, and your hull stops singing. Stay, and we set the course to Imperial Standard and stream it to the fleet. Your choice. Ress's voice slid softly onto Kettle's private channel. If you do the latter, we will not intervene, they said. It would be entertaining. Not our style, Ibarra said. He leaves with dignity he can salvage. Morales, on public channel, counted down from 5 with the patience of a parent. Dogstar peeled away on the count of 3, dignity home to the Oort cloud. The sails folded, the ring quieted. Thank you, Ress said later, when the paperwork had been filed that such incidents always require, for not humiliating him entirely. Humiliation lingers longer than understanding, Ibarra said, and understanding travels farther. Ress nodded, once slow. I will quote you incorrectly in a memo. 6 months passed like a well-told story. Progress, setbacks, running jokes. Kettle's coffee moved through the fleet. Imperial officers learned to brew in 0G. Cooks traded recipes for ring ice sorbet. Someone in logistics invented a rank pin shaped like a tiny steaming cup and swore it was non-regulation yet inevitable. Incidents happened, small fights, old habits, but fewer each month. The fleet's accident rate dipped. Complaints about mandatory reflection hour, an ugly phrase for a good idea, rose, then fell as people realized it came with biscuits. Back on the Obedience, a quiet revolution sprouted in the least likely place, the museum deck, a vanity space where trophies were displayed, flags, fossils, pieces of conquered tech. Ress proposed a new exhibit, Artifacts of Restraint. Restraint, Viliath repeated in his office as if testing a sharp edge. Examples where choosing not to strike produced more order, Ress said. Visitors would walk through a timeline, skirmishes diffused, alliances formed, disasters avoided by listening first. The final display would be a cafe. A cafe, the Admiral said, flat, with a single rule. You speak while holding a warm cup. It slows sentences. Villiath stared out at the stars like a man who had built a ladder to the sky and was being told to consider stairs. People will mock us. They already do, Rest said very gently, but not the way you fear. And the mockery stays in the mess. The respect travels to the bridge. He thought for a long time. Build it, he said at last, quietly. Rest bowed and, after leaving, did not walk so much as hurry. The exhibit opened 2 months later to little fanfare and obscene success. Line crews came for the biscuits and stayed for the feeling. Pilots wandered in because mechanics told them to. Captains came because rumors suggested a place where words landed softer. The last display was indeed a cafe, Kettle's design scaled elegantly, no banners, where you paid with stories you'd learned to tell without violence. Villiath visited in disguise, obviously comically, but no one said so. He stood in a corner and watched an engineer in oil-streaked sleeves explain to a navigator how a joke slip between two people turns into a bridge. He watched as a lieutenant learned to steam milk and looked abruptly, inexplicably proud. He left without comment. The next day, he issued a fleet-wide order normalizing quiet hours across all ships, and, against stereotype, he did not yell when someone drew a tiny smiling cup next to his signature. A courier pod docked at Kettle on the last day of the 6-month window. Rest stepped through carrying a single envelope. Adjunct Third trailed behind, looking as if they'd survived a scandal that turned out to be a picnic. By order of the Grand Admiral, Rest said in the mess deck, voice amplified to reach the gathered crew, the provisional arrangement is made permanent. Station K-67E is recognized as an independent neutral facility under Imperial protection, contractually, not ceremonially. Continued trade at agreed rates. No cannons at your windows. The mess deck erupted. Morales kissed Tanaka on the cheek. Tanaka pretended to object. Someone popped a seal on a canister and a puff of coffee-scent vapor shot into the air like a parade. Ibarra took the envelope, slid out the single dark sheet, and read the line Villiath had handwritten at the bottom. She lifted her eyes, a small warmth gathering there. Anything else? She asked Ress. Yes, Ress said, a personal note. They produced a small pouch and handed it to Morales. He opened it and laughed. Inside lay a rank pin, a tiny steaming cup in polished steel. Non-regulation yet inevitable, Ress quoted. It's become a thing. Morales pinned it to his apron over the words "been there" and stood a little straighter, as if a joke had been told to its conclusion and left behind a backbone. Join us for the closing ceremony? He asked Ress. Ress's mask brightened. What is the closing ceremony? Art. At the ring's edge, Kettle unfurled the assembled micro-reflectors in their most ambitious pattern yet. Percy had worked on it in secret with half the station, night side after lights out, whistling and humming and muttering about kerning. Tanaka had tuned the timing down to atoms. Morales had insisted on an embellishment that made Percy roll his eyes and then implement it perfectly. At Ibarra's word, the array fired. For a long minute, nothing. Then, seen from anywhere in the fleet, Saturn itself acquired a living mural that shifted and breathed with the planet's slow curls. Words appeared, high imperial and English, side by side, floating on the ring plane's glitter, and faint aurora echoes teased from Jupiter's whisper, "Drink calmly, think kindly, aim carefully." The letters drifted, reformed, and became an image, two hands passing a small cup, then a different image, a cannon folding itself into a table, then another line, "Power doesn't have to shout." Silence held. No one fired. 1,000 shipboard microphones caught 1,000 soft sounds. A throat cleared, a chair gently scraped, someone somewhere saying, "Huh." Then the embellishment, Morales' flourish, revealed itself. As the mural faded, a faint, elegant signature curled across the rings like steam. Kettle. Ress let out a laugh that surprised them. Adjunct Third clapped once and then, horrified, pretended they had dropped something. On the obedience, Villiath sat alone and watched until the last letter dissolved. His face changed by degrees, so small that only a computer would have noticed. He did not smile. He did something rarer. He understood. Minutes later, Kettle's channel chimed. "Grand Admiral Villiath," Percy announced. The Admiral filled the dome. No pomp, no staff, just a man who'd wrestled certainty and found it sweatier than legend promised. "Commander Ibarra," he said, "your art is noted. Your coffee reaches our patrols. Our accident rate continues to fall. Our crews argue less and speak more." He paused. "Some have asked whether we are becoming soft." Ibarra watched him like someone listening for the right note. "Are you?" We are becoming precise, he said, and the word had new iron in it. We still enforce order. We will still act when necessary, but we act less from habit, more from choice. Ibarra nodded once, slow. We can live with that neighbor. Neighbors, he repeated. We will send a liaison. Someone who understands both your coffee and our pride. Rest looked as if they'd been nominated by gravity itself. Accepted, Ibarra said. Welcome to the outpost that thinks flavor is a foreign policy. A muscle at Viliath's jaw flickered. Amusement, discipline. Do not overreach, Commander. We don't, she said. We overflow, he actually huffed. You are intolerable, he said, and cut the channel before anyone had to name the thing happening in his face. Life, being practical, resumed its chores. Kettle expanded. Another greenhouse coil, a second roastery, a classroom where, 3 days a week, people in uniforms learned to pour a latte heart and talk about how to disagree with the supervisor. Imperial ships scheduled port calls not for refueling, but for quiet hours in the museum deck cafe. The museum added a new exhibit, The Day the Slat Skipped, with a plaque that read, in both languages, Physics is friendlier than pride if you ask correctly. Scavenger raids dropped by 90%, partly because raiders didn't want their hulls to sing rude ballads, partly because a rumor slid through the outer belts that Kettle could make your ship's guidance see ghosts if you arrived with bad intentions. It could. Percy was unfair. Rest moved into a small module on Kettle, half office, half bunk, all order. They adopted the station's rituals slowly. They learned the lunar calendar of maintenance. They learned the names of Tanaka's tools, and more importantly, why the tools had names. They learned to wipe a portside table in circles because the grain of the composite preferred respect. Morales declared them a qualified part-time barista after they poured a passable leaf into a cup without spilling. Rest wore the certificate like a medal. One evening, call it a season later, Rest stood with Ibarra in the dome while Saturn turned the color of candlelight and the ring plane burned with small, precise reflections. Before I came, Rest said, I believed power meant never being laughed at. And now? Ibarra said. Now I think power means being laughable and staying anyway. Ibarra's smile was quiet. That's almost the whole trick. Almost. She lifted her cup, steam fogging the glass, drawing a momentary halo around her reflection. The rest is staying kind when nobody's watching. They watched the ring plane scrape quietly along the giant's shadow. Do you miss conquest? Ibarra asked at last. Rest thought, and the thinking took the time it deserved. I miss simplicity, they said, but not enough to give this back. Good, Ibarra said. Simplicity is a story we tell because it fits in one breath. We have more breaths now. Rest glanced at her. Are you writing a speech? I'm practicing for never giving one, she said. Percy cut in, playful. Too late. The crew has requested an address to commemorate 6 months of not dying. Votes passed with foam. Morales' voice bubbled on the channel. And we arranged a surprise. Ibarra sighed at the dome. What did you people do? Come to the mess, Morales sang. Bring your sternest commander face. The mess deck was full to its seams. Crew members perched on railings. Imperial techs stood awkwardly, then less awkwardly. A handful of civilians who drifted in on rumor leaned in as if warming to a hearth. On the bulkhead, someone had hung a banner with a 3-part motto, Drink calmly, think kindly, aim carefully. Morales climbed onto a crate, raised his hands, and the gentle roar quieted. Friends, he said, and former enemies who now owe me tips. We gathered to mark a thing most places never get, the moment after the moment, the one where you decide whether victory turns you cruel or curious. He gestured to Ibarra, who looked as if she'd been ambushed by affection and was deciding to let it happen. She stepped forward, set her cup down, and did not clear her throat because she had learned from Percy that microphones punish nervous noises more than mistakes. I don't have a speech, she said. You all wrote it. You kept us from dying. You kept us from getting proud about not dying. You taught each other new ways to be necessary. She glanced at the banner. We came out here for ice and found out why we wanted ice. It's not the water. It's what we do with it together. She lifted the cup. To the rings that taught us timing. To Jupiter that sang when we asked. To the admiral who learned to receive a joke without returning a shot. To the envoy who poured a decent leaf. To the crew who made a weapon miss by one precise laugh. To the AI that thinks in hospitality. to the engineer who keeps our chaos grounded, to the barista who realized flavor is a foreign policy. Morales shouted, and to the commander who lets us be funny without ever being cruel. Laughter. A cheer. Someone tried to whistle and failed grandly, which was better than success. Ibarra drank. The crew drank. Ress, after a heartbeat, drank too. Percy dimmed the lights by a considerate 2%. Tanaka triggered a panel. The bulkhead slid back to reveal, of course, art. A mural filled the wall. A stylized kettle nestled in the rings, arrows flowing not outward but between, trade routes, shared signals, jokes flitting like small birds. The obedience was there too, not as a monster but as a participant, a ship with a cafe on its museum deck and a line out the door. In the corner, Morales had painted 3 tiny words in neat block letters, power with grace. Nice touch, Ibarra murmured. The letters are made of tiny beans, he whispered back. Of course they are. Ress stepped close, studying the lines as if they were a strategy. We will not keep this forever, they said softly, not as a threat, but as a truth. Empires change. People forget. There will be new admirals. Some will be worse, some will be better. Ibarra nodded. Then we'll keep telling the joke until it's not a joke anymore. What do we do when it stops working? Ress asked. Morales answered for her, eyes still on the mural. We make a better one. Ibarra exhaled, a breath that tasted like roasted seed and earned peace. Back to work, she said to the room, and the room, loving her for it, cheered again. Months later, a scout skiff no one had invited drifted into an outer moon's faint arc. Its captain had heard stories about a station that fought with laughter and survived by serving. They had not believed the stories. They did not believe much in anything that wasn't hard and cruel. Kettle hailed them with a simple beam, welcome, free refills. They docked, sullen and suspicious. Morales met them at the airlock with a cup that steamed and a grin he did not weaponize. He asked questions that had answers. He told a joke that landed not as an insult, but as permission. They stayed an hour longer than they planned. 2 of their crew asked where they could buy a grinder. One of them cried into a napkin and left with a small sealed envelope labeled, "Open when you're sure you can still change." On their way out, they drifted past the ring plane. It glittered. For a second, just one, the reflectors caught the light in a way that spelled a word only if you wanted to see it. Stay. They didn't. Not then. But the captain changed course by a degree they never explained, and that degree, carried long enough, became somewhere else than where they'd thought they were going. Their crew drank calmly, thought kindly, and aimed carefully when it mattered. On the museum deck of the Obedience, under the cafe's warm lights, a new display case held a plain steel thermos and 4 cups. The plaque read, "On the day we were almost glorious and instead became precise." Viliath stood there some evenings, hands behind his back, and listened to people talk without him. He did not drink coffee. He had never learned to like it. But he liked what happened to the room when other people did. Back at Kettle, the sign over the airlock acquired a second line in smaller letters, hand-stenciled by a crew with paint on their sleeves and something like pride under their ribs. "We serve humanity, and humanity serves coffee. Empire's welcome to bring a mug." The ring plane turned. The station spun. Somewhere deep in the hull, Percy tuned a joke for a day they would need it. Tanaka tightened a bolt that had loosened from 1,000 good vibrations. Morales practiced a new pour that looked like 2 hands meeting. And Commander Mara Ibarra stood in the dome and watched the big things move with their slow, teachable grace. She lifted her cup toward the planet that taught her patience, and the giant that had sung when asked, and the ships who had learned that power can be silent without being small. "Morning," she said to the view, to whoever needed the greeting. "Coffee?" The universe obligingly poured.